Have you ever heard the expression dog tired? Well, Lucy just wants to lay here in the sun while I take time to invite you to join us on our YouTube channel. If you like our videos, we'd like to see you subscribe and click the little bell so that you know about the notifications. If you want to help us, please share our videos on your other social media accounts. Isn't that what you say, Lucy? Oh, you're too sleepy to talk? Here, I have my boiling water bath warmed up. It's actually nearly at boiling. I don't want it to quite boil. You will notice that I've got the bottom rack from the pressure canner in this big stainless steel commercial pot. It just works great for doing our boiling water baths. And here I have the pan that we're going to cook our Cowboy Candy in. And I have some very hot water. It's nearly to the boiling point on the back. And I'm going to put my lids and jar lids and rings. I know you don't really have to do that, but I was just taught by my grandma and my parents that you sterilize everything. I don't have enough to do a full batch, but I do have a it's not a serving bowl, actually. I guess it is called a serving bowl. I do have a bowl full of jalapeno peppers that come out of the garden. It's not enough for a batch, but I'm not going to let them go to waste. Normally you would put more garlic than this in, but I have 3 small cloves of garlic here that has been skinned and ready. I will be adding, of course, ground mustard. Most recipes, let me interject this here, most recipes are going to call for mustard seed. I'm sorry, I don't like crunching down on that stuff, so I'd rather just use the powdered mustard. And I have turmeric, which is ground turmeric. I'll be using sugar. We'll be using some apple cider vinegar. And here's a little tip for you. We always make sure that our rings are taken off of our jars after we've done our canning. So we like to put those clean lids in a plastic bag. They're clean when they go in there, nothing can get on them, so they're going to be ready to use. And if I have heated up too many lids, I just rinse those off and let them dry, and then I put those in here as well. I have some little jelly jars here. We always store our jars upside down out in the detached garage on the shelving unit, and they're always cleaned in the dishwasher before they're carried out there. So it doesn't take much to just kind of rinse those out. This is the tip I read about online. Normally I would put these little jelly jars over in a pot on the stove. Well, they're going to be clean. This water's clean, and I read online, why not go ahead and put them over into this nearly boiling water before you fill them. I just thought it was a marvelous idea. It'll warm the jar up as we're going to be putting our hot mixture in it. So let's get started here. Okay, I'm going to do this as if I were going to slice these jalapenos, but I'm actually going to chop them. I'm going to need 3 cups of sugar, and I am using a pure cane sugar. I know that I'm going to have a little bit of extra syrup left when I'm done here, but that's fine. Excuse me, that's 4 cups. I just looked at my recipe. 4 cups of sugar, and I will put the recipe at the end. Now, I'm going to need 3 cups of my apple cider vinegar. Okay, we're done with that portion. To our vinegar and sugar solution, I'll take that little shaker off because I need a lot more than a little shake. I'm going to put in this approximately 2 teaspoons of turmeric. Now, most recipes are going to call for 2 teaspoons of mustard seed. I'm going to put just a heaping teaspoon of the powder because it's ground up, it's going to occupy less space. There would be space between the seeds, so don't need that to be quite so strong. I will put my recipe as I use it at the very end of this blog. Normally, you would put the garlic in now. Most recipes call for it to be sliced. I want to grind it with my peppers and put it in at that time. It'll still give me the same flavor. Okay, I'm going to stir this till my sugar dissolves. I've now got my heat on a medium heat setting. I'm just trying to get it hot enough to mix my spices here. And I just realized I forgot to put the salt in it. That is just the way life happens around here, and I'm going to put just regular canning salt. And I need 2 teaspoons, and this is a half. So I'm going to need 4 of these since it's halves. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm looking now at my recipe to make sure I've got everything in there that we normally put in it. I have my salt, my sugar, my turmeric, my mustard seeds. Another thing that you'll see on a lot of recipes is to put like cayenne pepper in it to make it a little hotter. We find that by just chopping it up, seeds and all, it's about the temperature we want it to be, and it is hot. I don't want it so hot I can't stand to put it in my mouth, so we just don't put any additional peppers in it. We just like the flavor of the jalapenos. All right, I'll continue stirring this until all of my sugar is dissolved. Okay, as you can see, my sugar's dissolved. I've got a nice golden color with all the turmeric and the mustard in there. And I'm ready now to get my peppers ready to go into it. Okay, most people would take these jalapenos and cut them in rings and can them in rings, but that's nice if you want to put a few of them like out on a Mexican dish or something. But for us, we'd prefer to have them chopped, and so I'm going to be using the food processor. Putting a spoonful of this on a hamburger bun when you're grilling burgers is really going to perk up that burger. Same thing with a hot dog. We love to put it on crackers. We like to put it on cream cheese and mix it with cream cheese and spread that on crackers. It gives us lots of heat with the creaminess of the cheese. There's just a lot of more uses for us if we will take and chop these before we can them. It's now time to take the tops off of my peppers. If you're cutting these in rings, please be sure and wear gloves. There really isn't any heat on the outside. The heat on the peppers is on this inside membrane. Even this would be hot. I'm simply going to rake that over. I'm just cutting the tops off my peppers, putting them in the food chopper. That avoids me having to wear gloves. And I'm going to use the pulse cycle to get them to where I want them. I have really blistered my hands by making pickle rings, so I would be the first one to tell you, please wear gloves. You don't realize how hot this stuff is till it's too late. And it'd be nothing worse than getting this oil, capsaicin that's on the inside of these peppers, and have it on your hands and rub your eyes, or go to the bathroom and touch something else more a little more precious. Everything's precious, but I did that once and I learned the hard way. You don't do that. You You can make yourself dance around in absolute agony with peppers if you're just not careful what you're doing. All right, yeah, I can get them all in there. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get them all in, but I think I can. Being an old man, I've made about every mistake that can be made. That's just the nature of life. And even though I've not touched the insides, as soon as I get through with this last pepper, I will be washing my hands good in some very hot soapy water. And this little thing here is going to go right over into the dishwater. Okay, my processor here is full of peppers and I'm ready to just pulse. And don't pull up on it. Push down, Robert. As you can see, not only is there membrane inside there, there's seeds, and those seeds are just as hot as that membrane. Everything on the inside of the pepper is where the heat is. I don't want to make it mush. I just want it all chopped. And this lid really does sit down on there tight. Alright, it's time to take the blade out. Don't want to lose any of my little precious peppers. We should have more put on this month before frost sets in. Okay, now I'm going to take my spatula that I'm stirring everything with and scoop these out. I may pick out a piece or two. Ooh, I can smell the heat in the air with my nostrils. My next step is to grind my garlic. Now we're going to take our garlic and dump it over into this mini processor. The big one would be just too difficult. Now this thing is older than and as I said, if you follow an original recipe, it says to slice this. You know, I kind of like doing things my way. Now I'm going to add my garlic. Okay, I now have everything in the pot. And actually the little red ones make it look good. I do have a few pieces in there that didn't get ground up, but it's not going to hurt anything. I could take it out and dice it with a knife, but let's be honest, I'm not wanting to touch that stuff until after it's cooked. Okay, as you can tell, it's definitely come to a rolling boil. I've now turned it down to the low setting on the smaller center part of the eye. And so I'm going to set the timer for 15 minutes. And then I'll be ready to turn my heat off and pack these jars. Our peppers are just simmering. We have 22, 21, we're on the countdown. The jars are in this water, and that was a neat way to heat them up. The jars were entirely clean when I put them in, and I put them in with my jar lifter. It set them down in there just perfect. Okay, turn off the timer and we're ready to get started here and finish up. Okay, let's start by turning off the heat and get my first jar. Set it here. I probably will not get very many jars, and that's okay. The reason being, you would have more jars filled if you were doing it in rings. They wouldn't pack as tight, but when you're doing it as chopped, it's just the same concept as I was telling you about the mustard earlier. There's far less space between the pepper pieces because they're smaller and they're packed. So let's see if I can get some the juice to bring that up to where I need it to. You should measure this. Make sure you have no more than a 1/2 inch. I can tell by looking at it. I've been canning so long, but there should be a 1/2 inch space there. As you can see, I'm putting vinegar on a paper towel. All this hard work could be for nothing if there is sugar or something on that lid that causes it to not to seal. So you have to pay close attention to that. And I'm going to take my ring, take off all that water, and boy, it's good and hot. Said, a lot of recipes say you don't need to do that anymore, but I do. You just want that finger tight. You do not want it to get it too tight. And I think it looks kind of pretty. We're going to set it right over in here. Take out our next jar and fill it. I think we're going to be lucky if we end up with 3 jars. Because of our elevation, we have to add 5 minutes to what most people would for boiling because we are on the plateau. So I'm going to bring this up to a rolling boil. That's all I have, is just the 3 jars, but I'm going to bring that up to a rolling boil. Normally you would boil it for 15 minutes, but because we're at a high elevation here on the plateau, I'll have to add an extra 5 minutes and boil it for 20. As you can see, we're beginning to get a really good rolling boil, so I'm going to set the timer here on this. And as I said, we're at a higher elevation than most people, so I'm adding 5 minutes. It should be 15, but we've got to do it for 20. Now, as soon as these things finish up in a 20-minute boiling water bath, I'll set them out on a towel here on the counter and let them dry. Okay, there's our timer. It's time to turn off the water. And I'm going to take my jars and set them over here. You can let these set in there for an additional 5 minutes to cool down, but I don't think I'm going to have any problem with that syrup trying to siphon off. Now green beans, that's a different story. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take my paper towel, and I'm not putting any pressure on that lid. I'm just drying that water off.